The envelope in my hand felt heavier than it should have. Marked urgent boardroom delivery in bold red letters that practically screamed trouble. But Victoria Langley, everyone called her Karen behind her back, and for damn good reason, wasn't about to let me through those polished oak doors of the Oakwood Estates Community Center. She stood there in her perfectly tailored pastel blazer, arms crossed like she owned the damn zip code, her Botox smile twitching with that special mix of fake politeness and pure contempt. "What exactly do you think you're doing here, Jordan?" she asked, voice dripping honey that could rot teeth. "Delivery for the board meeting," I said, holding up the envelope like it was Exhibit A in a trial she was about to lose. MS. Hargrove in compliance said it was time-sensitive, something about the new zoning filings. Right? The groundskeeper. Victoria's laugh was light, airy, the kind that carried across the manicured lawns and made neighbors nod along like trained seals. "Here's the thing, sweetie. Board meetings are for actual decision-makers, people who shape this community's future, not for folks who mow lawns, haul mulch, and push those little notice carts around. I just need to drop this off." She held out her manicured hand, nails clicking like tiny claws. "Give it here. I'll make sure it reaches the right people." MS. Hargrove specifically said deliver it directly to the board. My khakis and simple polo, the standard uniform for anyone who actually kept this place running, suddenly felt like a neon sign screaming peasant. Victoria gestured at me like I was a stain on her white carpet. "Do you have any idea who's in there?" "The executive board. Major property owners. Our top sponsors. They don't need the help wandering through important discussions. It disrupts the vibe." Behind her, through the glass walls, I could see the long conference table gleaming under crystal chandeliers. The usual suspects sat there, retired lawyers, trust fund Karens, and developers who treated the HOA like their personal ATM. Victoria's husband lounged at the head, looking every inch the puppet king he'd been for years. Next to him was Martin, the treasurer, and a dozen others I recognized from the monthly fine lists. "Victoria, this is marked urgent. Then you should have brought it up faster," she snapped, plucking the envelope from my fingers with 2 fingers like it might contaminate her. "I'll handle it. You can go back to the shed now. I'm sure there are hedges that need trimming before someone files another complaint." MS. Hargrove said, her voice hardened, that sweet mass cracking just enough to show the steel underneath. "I'm the president of Oakwood Estates, HOA. You're the maintenance coordinator. We're not equals here, and we're certainly not debating protocol in front of the board. Go back downstairs." I met her eyes for a long beat, then nodded slowly. "Okay, Victoria." As I turned toward the service elevator, I heard her mutter to the board behind her, "My little project. The previous owner insisted we give him the job here after he returned from abroad. Can't handle anything more complicated than clipping bushes. But what can you do? Family connections, or whatever." The doors closed on the sound of polite chuckles that felt like tiny knives. I'd been coordinating maintenance at Oakwood Estates for 6 months now, ever since I'd quietly moved back to the States. The position was temporary, or at least that's what I told myself when I signed the papers. A quiet way to stay under the radar while I watched how this place really ran. Nobody knew I'd come back with serious money, serious enough to make the Singapore tech startup acquisition look like pocket change. They didn't know about the network of shell companies I'd used to scoop up property after property in Oakwood Estates over the last year and a half. They just knew Jordan Hale had finally settled down after wandering around Asia, needed a job to get back on his feet, and the maintenance shed was probably the best he could manage. Victoria had been thrilled, of course. It gave her another target to highlight the contrast between the respectable homeowners and the guy who wore work boots. The board loved her stories at parties, how the help was so eager, so grateful. I'd smiled through it all, nodding politely while I sorted notices and fixed sprinklers. Back in the maintenance shed, I resumed organizing the afternoon stack of violation tickets. My supervisor, Rita, the 63-year-old admin who'd run the office for 25 years, popped in with coffee and her usual warm smile. She treated everyone the same, whether they drove a Bentley or a beater truck. "How'd the delivery go?" she asked. Victoria took it. Didn't want me in the boardroom. Rita's face soured like she'd bitten a lemon. "That woman has too much ego for one zip code. You're part of this community. Half the board doesn't even know your name. She prefers it that way." She patted my shoulder. "Don't let her get to you. You're doing real work here." After she left, I checked my phone. A text from my lawyer. "James, paperwork filed. You now control voting rights on 73% of Oakwood Estates properties via the trusts. Congratulations." I typed back, "Keep it quiet for now," slipped the phone away, and went back to sorting violation notices. The neighborhood my grandfather had helped develop 40 years ago was now mine to steer. I'd spent months in north of 300 million acquiring lots, foreclosures, and blocks from retiring owners. Small deals scattered through enough legal layers that nobody connected the dots. Victoria owned her McMansion outright. Her allies held the rest. Or they had until I'd bought them out. Now I held the majority vote. And only my lawyers knew. I wasn't ready to reveal it yet. Part of me liked staying in the shed, learning the real rhythm of the place from the ground up. Another part waited for the perfect moment, the one where the mask would slip and the truth would hit like a sledgehammer. That moment was coming faster than I expected. 3 weeks later, I was knee-deep in mulch orders when Rita called me in her tiny office off the shed. "Jordan, we've got a situation." Victoria had just emailed down a new directive. All maintenance and community volunteers had to work every weekend. No overtime, just volunteer hours to demonstrate HOA loyalty. Rita's jaw was tight enough to crack walnuts. "She can't do that. She's the president. She says she can." She's been pushing to right-size the staff for months. Claims we're overstaffed. This is her way of making people quit without paying severance. "How many does this hit?" 14. "Most have been here 20-plus years." Her voice dropped. "Jordan, I can't lose this. I'm 2 years from full retirement benefits. But my husband's chemo schedule. I need to be home, not out here trimming hedges for free every Saturday." I looked at the email on her screen, Victoria's signature bold and flowery, like she was signing a royal decree. "Don't worry about it. Rita, I'll handle this." "You? How?" "Let me make some calls." That night, I texted James, "Time to go public. File the disclosures and proxy notices first thing tomorrow." "You sure?" "This will detonate." "Completely sure. I'm counting on the fireworks." Next morning, I showed up early. The shed was quiet. Most staff wouldn't clock in for another hour. I changed out of my usual polo and khakis into the sharp charcoal suit I'd kept folded in my truck, the one I hadn't worn since Singapore closed the deal. At 8:47 a.m., James filed everything with the county recorder and emailed the board, Jordan Hale, through various trusts, now controlled voting rights on 73% of Oakwood Estates properties. At 8:51, the president's assistant blasted an emergency board meeting notice. At 9:15, I took the service elevator up to the community center's executive wing. The boardroom was pure chaos when I walked in. Phones ringing, laptops open, voices overlapping like a bad stock market crash. Victoria stood at the head of the table, face pale, staring at the printed disclosure packet like it had personally insulted her ancestors. Her husband was on the phone, whispering furiously. Martin Sawyer paced near the windows. "It has to be a mistake," Victoria was saying. "Jordan doesn't have that kind of money. He mows our lawns for God's sake." I knocked on the glass. Every head snapped toward me. The room went graveyard quiet. Victoria's expression went confusion, disbelief, then straight to rage as she took in the suit. The calm posture, the total lack of deference. "What the hell are you doing here?" she demanded. "I'm here for the emergency board meeting. I received the notice. This is for board members and major stakeholders only," she hissed. "I told you before." "Victoria." My voice carried across the table. "Is this real? Did you actually secure voting control of 73% of the properties?" "Yes, Mom." The silence that followed was so thick you could have spread it on toast and sold it as HOA-approved marmalade. Martin found his voice first. "How? Where did you get that capital?" "Co-founded a tech firm in Singapore 4 years ago. Rapid growth. Acquired 18 months back. My share was substantial. I've been investing carefully ever since." I walked to an empty chair at the table and sat like I belonged there, which, technically, I now did. "Why didn't you tell anyone?" Victoria asked, voice strained. "I tried 2 years ago when the first purchases started. Sent a polite letter through channels. You replied that the board didn't have time for another one of those maintenance guys' schemes, and I should focus on keeping the grass green." I smiled without warmth. "So I did. I got very good at it. Then I bought the whole damn neighborhood." Victoria slammed her perfectly manicured hand on the mahogany. "This is ridiculous. You can't just buy up properties and control the HOA without disclosure. Every transaction was legal and properly recorded. The proxy thresholds weren't triggered until now. I structured it to stay under radar." I nodded toward the association's attorney, Jennifer Park, who was already flipping pages. "Jennifer can confirm everything's clean." Jennifer looked up, face professionally blank. "The filings are in order. The voting control is legitimate." Victoria sat down hard, like her designer heels had suddenly turned to lead. "Jordan, what is this about? Why go through all this trouble to control the association in secret?" "Because I wanted to understand it first. Wanted to see how it really operated from the lawns up. And I wanted to see how the board would treat me when they thought I was nobody important." I looked straight at Victoria. "Turns out the answer is pretty damn badly." "That's not fair," Victoria started, but I cut in smoothly. "You wouldn't let me deliver a legal notice because you were embarrassed by my work boots. You've spent 6 months telling everyone at cocktail hour about your charity case groundskeeper. And now you're trying to force the entire maintenance staff to work unpaid weekends so that you can justify cutting their hours and saving your precious budget for your next vacation." I pulled out my phone and forwarded the email chain. "That directive is canceled. By the way, I just sent a community-wide notice as majority voter. You can't. I own 73% of the properties." "Victoria, I can do quite a lot." The treasurer leaned forward. "Jordan, what exactly are your intentions here? Are you planning to dissolve the HOA or something?" "I already have control. The question is what I'm going to do with it." The room held its breath. "First, I'm taking a permanent seat on the board. As majority voter, I'm entitled. I'll take the position that was vacant since old Mr. Hargrove passed." Victoria nodded slowly, stunned. "Second, full operational review. Every rule, every fine schedule, every line item in the budget. I want to know where we're protecting the community and where we're just punishing people for existing." "That will take months," Martin protested. "Then we'd better start immediately." "Third, I'm rewriting executive compensation and board perks. Too much focus on short-term fines and personal projects. Not enough on long-term livability and resident retention." Victoria stood abruptly, chair scraping like nails on a chalkboard. "You can't just walk in here in your little suit and, actually I can." That's what majority control means. I turned to Jennifer. "Draft new governing documents. Metrics tied to resident satisfaction, fair enforcement, and sustainable community growth instead of revenue from fines." "You're going to destroy everything we've built," Victoria said, voice shaking with barely contained fury. "You have no experience running an association at this scale. You made money on some tech thing. Congratulations. But this is a neighborhood. It's rules, standards, keeping the riff-raff out. You're right, which is why I'm not running day-to-day operations myself. The existing staff stays. Rita keeps her role with a proper title and raise. But major decisions now require my approval. Rule changes, amenity sales, significant expenditures, all of it comes through me. That's impossible, Victoria snapped. We'll be paralyzed. Then you'll learn to make better decisions the first time. I looked at her steadily. And Victoria, that proposal you've been shopping for 6 months, the one to sell the community park and pool to Evergreen Development for a private club conversion. The $90 million deal that would make you and your husband consultants with 7-figure payouts. Her face went very still. I reviewed the terms last night. You were planning to ram it through at today's meeting, weren't you? Before this little emergency interrupted, I slid a folder across the table. The deal undervalues the amenities by at least 40%. It carves out our most valuable green space while leaving the neighborhood with higher fees and fewer services. And coincidentally, your personal compensation package would be worth about $30 million over 5 years. That deal would modernize this place, she hissed. That deal would line your pockets while gutting everything the original families built. It's a terrible deal for Oakwood Estates, a mediocre one for the developer, and an excellent one for Victoria Langley personally. I nodded toward the attorney. I'm voting against it. With 73% control. It's dead. The color drained from Victoria's face like someone pulled the plug. You can't. Months of negotiations. Evergreen is expecting. Evergreen can find another neighborhood. We're not interested. Jennifer spoke carefully. The agreements include a breakup fee of $8 million if we back out. Pay it. Consider it tuition for learning not to sell the soul of the community for a yacht upgrade. Victoria's husband was reading the folder, his expression darkening page by page. Victoria, is this accurate? Were you really planning to privatize the park? It's not profitable in the short term, she tried. It's the heart of the neighborhood. Your father helped plant those trees 30 years ago. He looked at his wife with something between disappointment and disgust. What were you thinking? I was thinking about survival, she shot back, voice rising. You've been running this HO like it's still the 1990s, generous amenities, no real enforcement, loyalty over profit. The market doesn't care. We need to be lean, aggressive, revenue-focused. We need to be sustainable, I corrected quietly. Profitable where it counts, but not at the cost of turning neighbors into cash cows. Victoria turned on me, eyes blazing. You don't understand. You've been here 6 months clipping hedges. I've been on this board for 12 years. I've earned my position. I made the hard calls. I don't think it. I know it because I control 73% of the votes and you control one McMansion. I kept my voice level. This isn't about earning, Victoria. It's about legal control and fiduciary duty to every homeowner, not just the ones who can afford 7-figure fines. This is personal, she spat. You're doing this because I wouldn't let you in the boardroom, because I treated you like the nobody you dressed like. Partially, I admitted, but mostly because this park deal is genuinely toxic and because your style of leadership is poisoning the community culture the founders spent decades building. The meeting dragged on for another 2 hours, financials reviewed, rules debated, new protocols set. Victoria looked like she'd aged 10 years. The other board members seemed cautiously hopeful, though clearly shell-shocked by the power shift. As people filed out, Rita caught my eye in the hallway and just shook her head, laughing silently. Victoria waited outside the doors, expression pure venom. This isn't over, she said quietly. Yes, it is. The park deal is dead. The unpaid weekend mandate is gone. And if you try to undermine the new direction, I'll call a vote to remove you entirely. You'd fire the president. I'd remove an executive putting personal gain ahead of the community. Title doesn't change responsibility. I started to walk past her, then paused. For what it's worth, Victoria, you're actually good at parts of this. You're organized. You understand enforcement, and you can close deals. But you've lost sight of why the HOA exists in the first place. It's not a personal revenue stream. Easy to say when you're suddenly the richest guy in the zip code. I was saying the same thing when I was mowing lawns for $18 an hour. Money doesn't change principles. Victoria, it just reveals them. I took the elevator back down to the maintenance shed. Rita was at her desk reading the community-wide memo I'd sent canceling the weekend work order. She looked up, eyes wide at the suit. Jordan, what on earth is going on? Long story. Short version. I control most of the votes now, and nobody's working weekends for free. She stared, then burst out laughing so hard she had to sit down. You own the neighborhood? You've been fixing my sprinklers for 6 months, and you own the neighborhood? 73%. Yes. And you let Victoria treat you like, she laughed harder. Oh, that woman must be losing her mind. She's processing. Over the next 3 months, the changes rolled out quietly but firmly. I brought in neutral consultants, not the usual fine, happy auditors, but community planners who actually talk to residents. We discovered the longtime maintenance crew had ideas that could cut costs without cutting people. We promoted Rita to operations director with a real salary and mandate to document every fair process before she retired. We reinvested in the park instead of selling it, brought in new landscaping talent, and within a year, it became the jewel everyone bragged about instead of the cash grab target. We killed the evergreen deal, paid the breakup fee, and watched property values rise as word spread that Oakwood Estates was finally run for people, not profit. Victoria stayed on the board, but under heavy supervision. To her credit, once the shock faded, she started showing up at community events without her usual entourage, actually listening instead of lecturing. At a board meeting 6 months later, she approached me during a break. I've been thinking about what you said about principles and money revealing them. You were right. I got so focused on the power and the optics, I forgot why any of us moved here in the first place. She offered her hand. I'm sorry for how I treated you and how I was running things. I want to do better. I shook it. I think we can work together on that. My grandfather's original vision for the neighborhood finally started breathing again. We rewrote the rule book. Grass could be 3 inches instead of 2. Flags flew on holidays without $250 fines. And mailboxes didn't need to be inspected monthly. Residents stopped living in fear of the next violation letter. Property values climbed steadily because people actually wanted to live here instead of just surviving the HOA. Victoria eventually stepped down as president a year later, citing new family priorities. The board elected Rita's successor in a landslide. I stayed on as a voting member, still showing up to meetings in my old polo and khakis half the time, often straight from fixing a sprinkler head. Nobody commented on the wardrobe anymore. At a neighborhood block party 2 years after the reveal, Rita raised her glass. A toast to Jordan, who proved success doesn't always wear a suit and who taught us all a lesson about assumptions. Victoria, now just another homeowner, smiled tightly but genuinely, and who will never let me forget the time I wouldn't let him into the boardroom because he was dressed like the groundskeeper. To be fair, I said, I was the groundskeeper. I just happened to own the neighborhood too. She laughed, a real one this time. There's a difference. Not really. I was doing the same work either way. Ownership didn't change who I was or what I contributed. I still keep a desk in the maintenance shed. Rita drops by with coffee and stories about the old days. The park we save hosts summer concerts instead of private club plans. And Victoria? She's actually become one of the more reasonable board voices now that she finally learned to value people over PowerPoints. Oakwood Estates is thriving, ranked one of the best managed communities in the state, not because we chased fines or flashy deals, but because we remembered that neighborhoods are made of neighbors. And every neighbor deserves respect, no matter where they stand on the org chart. It's a lesson I learned pushing that notice card and trimming hedges. Even though I controlled 73% of the votes. Or maybe especially because I did and still chose to work the grounds anyway. The vote that killed Victoria's shady park sale didn't come from a corner office or a gilded gavel. It came from someone who knew the community from the soil up, who knew residents by name, who delivered their violation notices and fixed their fences and learned what actually made the place worth living in. Sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is choose to see what everyone else overlooks. And sometimes the best revenge isn't revenge at all. It's simply being exactly who you are until the truth finally speaks loud enough to shake the whole damn neighborhood.